Hi, we're the members of the CATS program, and today we're interviewing Beth and Rasey, the Youth Development Director for Alliance for Healthy Youth.
You are watching A Lifetime of Influence, presented by the Alliance for Healthy Youth and the members of CATS, concerned about teen success.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys? We're good.
Right. Okay, so for the purpose of this interview, since we know and work with you, may we call you Beth Ann?
Totally fine.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, Beth Ann. So, where do you work?
I work for Alliance for Healthy Youth, and I'm the Youth Development Director with the CATS program.
Okay.
Which maybe I should describe the CATS program as stands for Concerned About Teen Success, which you guys know because you're in the program. But
Yes. Awesome.
So, why did you choose your profession?
I kind of fell into this profession, honestly. I was going to school for social work, which there are a lot of social workers that do, what I do. But I just happened to see a flyer on a bulletin board as I was walking to one of my classes, and it was for a drug prevention camp. So it was called Panda, which I think now it's called Youth to Youth, but it was a drug prevention camp where you went, and it was middle schoolers who came to hear all about the dangers of drugs and alcohol and other things, and then making healthy choices. So when I saw it, I actually had a friend that was an alcoholic. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. And I just happened to go to the camp. And from the camp, my profession just kind of like kept going.
Okay.
So really, totally by chance.
That sounds
That's
wonderful.
awesome.
So, when did you choose your profession?
As I said, in college, but kind of as I was going through the different camps. So even though I volunteered for that one camp, I ended up doing it for years and years and years. And funny story, I actually met my husband in the same camp.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer that whatever you do in your life happens for a reason. If I wouldn't have gone to that camp, I would have never met my husband. If I wouldn't have known my friend who was an alcoholic, I would have never gone to that camp and I would have never met my husband. So everything happens for a reason.
Wonderful. Of course. So, I know you mentioned going to college, but what type of education is needed for your profession?
So my profession, so my current position right now, working for Alliance for Healthy Youth, you can actually have several different ones. I do have a teaching background because in the midst of going into the drug prevention community services, I also I got a bachelor's degree in technical education because I really wanted to teach in college level. But I know a lot of other people that work here, they have an education degree, they might have a social work degree. So it's not like one degree. There are a lot of social workers who work in a drug and alcohol prevention field, which is actually called prevention field now. So when I first started, it was called drug and alcohol prevention, but now we deal in a lot of different things with drugs, suicide prevention, mental health prevention, and other things like that.
Awesome.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So my degree is community services and technical education.
Wonderful.
So, Beth Ann, what talents or gifts help you in your profession?
What talents and gifts? A lot of patience. And I laugh because I tell you, I kind of laugh about that all the time. Definitely have to have patience because the position that I hold running the CATS program, I constantly have to be flexible. I constantly have to, right now we currently have 35 teenagers. So if you can only imagine, if you've got brothers and sisters, all the different personalities and stuff that goes in along with that. There's 35 different personalities amongst you guys. But also, dealing with the schools and the schedules, everything's always changing. You guys always hear us talk about how this school was canceled and that school was canceled and rescheduled. And it always has to do with snow days and testing schedules. And just sometimes we just don't have the speakers. So maybe we might have to switch just because maybe you guys can't go out because of something going on in the school. So definitely patience. But I totally believe you have to be organized to do this job, because there's a lot of different parts going on. And if I'm not organized and I'm not good at dealing with different parts And on top of it, dealing with everything at home, it's kind of like, this is my full-time job.
So, what are some ways you stay organized?
You know what? I have a lot of staff members here that like to make fun of my organizational skills because I use sticky notes a lot. So I make notes for my notes. I have notes everywhere, here, there, at home, and it helps me stay organized. Um, Honestly, that's probably the number one things I do. But I also try to ask for help if I need it, which is really, really important because, a job with teenagers can sometimes get overwhelming. But as I said, notes.
What? All right. So, do you work hard?
So no, no, I'm just kidding. I do work hard. Sometimes I feel like I might overwork, if that makes sense. So some weeks are totally normal weeks, but sometimes like when we have an awards banquet coming up, those weeks and the weeks coming up to that, a lot of times we work over. We don't work 40 hours a week. This is definitely not a job for 9 to 5. I definitely don't work 9 to 5. It comes to a point where a couple years ago I had to like actually turn my phone off because I was getting text messages at like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was always from teenagers who just had a question about where we were speaking or what we were doing, and usually it ended up with me waking up and be like, "Why are you awake? You guys should be sleeping. So you guys need your sleep." But yeah, it came to a point where I work hard, but I had to kind of like go back a little bit and be like, all right, I got to turn my phone off and I have to have that set time where I'm with my family.
Cool.
Yeah. No, it is super important to work hard at your job. It's important to like what you like, what you work at, but also know boundaries. You got to have boundaries.
Of course. So I'm assuming that with all that work that you had to do, you'd have to work over hours more, like multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me like some of your experience with that?
Well, it depends on the season of the school year. Right now, it's not really working over 40 hours, because we're getting ready for the new year. We don't start speaking until September in schools. But a lot of times when I'm working over the 40 hours, it's asking for other people in the office for help. When Samanti and I are like wrapping gifts until, 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, it's super important to ask for help.
Of course. All right. And so what gives you the motivation to work hard? Like what is keeping you going every single time?
Definitely the kids.
Mm.
I mean, I always joke around about how, I need a lot of patience for you guys. You guys are making me laugh. I do need a lot of patience, but I also do the work because I like working with teenagers. I like it when I see you guys get it, when those light bulbs go off in your head and you'd be like, oh, I know what I want to be for such and such, or I just like the light bulb going off in the head.
Of course. Okay, so what advice would you give to your younger self as you reflect now?
I struggled with this one a lot because I was like, what am I going to tell myself? Because I glanced over the questions. And the biggest thing is, what I can say is when I grew up, it was in the time where we were always told, you need to be seen but not heard. I heard that all the time, all the time. I was the only girl, had 3 brothers. My mom had a really large family, so there was 27 cousins, and there was only 7 girls. The rest of them were all boys. So they were constantly like, telling the girls how dumb they were, and they were louder than all the girls, and we had to be seen, not heard. I would tell my younger self to find my voice earlier. Absolutely. And to not let people like change my mind. Like I would decide, I'm going to do it this way. And I would let people kind of like, well, should you really do it that way? Definitely find your voice earlier. And I can tell you guys, start saving early. Okay. Start saving early. Start, doing your credit, getting your credit score. I know that has nothing to do with professionally, but sort of it does, because you guys really need to have the money when you get older to be able to live on, but also start establishing your credit early. Because I didn't do that really early on.
So, so what would we need to do to have and keep a job like yours?
Education. And it in any job you take, any career you just choose, education. I totally believe it doesn't need to be college necessarily, but for my position, obviously college degrees. Um, you need a college degree. But education, I tell my kids all the time, my personal kids, no matter what you want to do when you grow up, never stop learning. Always continuously go to those college classes, go to those trade classes, take an extra workshop. So if you guys were to actually come and be me, you got to go to college and maybe get a social work degree, a community service degree, a teaching degree. And then also, I didn't mention earlier, but I'm also certified in prevention. So I have my OCPS, which is Ohio Certified Prevention Specialist, which is super important in the state of Ohio because it's really, really big and super important.
Okay, so I like the advice that you gave us about keep continuing our education and establishing our financial stability. But what other advice do you have for us?
What I said earlier about having the boundaries, super important because otherwise you get really burned out and stressed out. And I'm not saying I got burned out in the job or anything like that, but I had to set those boundaries. I've done other things besides just turn off my phone at a certain time, but have those boundaries in place so you have your personal life and you have your professional life.
Well, thank you so much. We definitely learned a lot from your interview, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching A Lifetime of Influence. A Lifetime of Influence is funded by the County of Summit AGM Board.